10 smallest tech gadgets in the world. We love it when technology becomes smaller, and not only because it fits in the palm of my hand. It's small, but it's teeny tiny. We're talking about computers that can be blown away by a breeze, web servers the size of matchsticks, and cell phones small enough to fit on your keychain. And that's only the beginnings. Let's take a look at the top 10 smallest tech gadgets in the world. Number 10. IBM CPU that's smaller than a grain of salt. Everyone is competing to build the world's tiniest computer, but IBM is presently ahead of the pack, having developed a working CPU the size of a grain of salt. The device was introduced by IBM at Think 2018, with each computer costing under 10 cents to create. This isn't just about bragging rights. One of the project's main aims is to make the gadget compatible with blockchain technology. This implies that the same encryption technology used to safeguard cryptocurrencies may also be used to protect data on this grain-sized CPU, which has as much processing capacity as a powerful CPU from the 1990s. Given the low cost of fabrication, such a chip might easily become a replacement for RFID tags, which are used for tracking products and packages. It's an easy win for IBM and the world. Number 9. A tiny fingernail sensor to detect sunburn. CES 2018 introduced us to scores of amazing gadgets, but one of the tiniest was the UVSense, a wearable sensor that is designed to stick to your thumbnail. From there, it's all about sunlight. The sensor runs on solar energy while measuring any UV radiation it encounters. The goal, of course, is to measure sun exposure in an organic way for people, so they can understand when they're in danger of a sunburn and related skin cancer issues. The UVSense measures how much UV radiation has been accumulated over time, and reports it via a dedicated smartphone app, so the tech is well fitted for protective health solutions. And if you're concerned about whether you should use the UVSense at the beach or by the pool, don't worry about it. The tech is waterproof. Number 8. The smallest web server in the world is just a dot. There are two very impressive things about this server. First, it's only the size of a match head. Second, it was made way back in 1999, when traditional servers were anything but compact and mobile. The story began with a graduate hobby at the University of Massachusetts. A researcher designed and created the server with the smallest microcontroller chip available at that time. It wasn't even part of a college project. He simply did it on his own time. In only a few months of operation, the tiny server managed to link up about 45,000 web pages for 6,000 users, which is really impressive for a machine that measured 1/4 of an inch at its widest. Granted, web servers were less complicated back then and didn't need to transmit as much complicated content. Plus, internet users were more patient. The server only had 256 bytes of memory and a basic serial port connection to work with. However, it laid the foundation for the Internet of Things and other major advances destined to arrive in the coming years. Number 7. The ultra-small Pocket Sprite game system. The ambitious Pocket Sprite is a crowd-funded gaming system roughly modeled after the Game Boy, but also around the size of the key fob for your car. This tiny mobile game device includes everything you need to play a video game, including storage, RAM, sound, Wi-Fi connectivity, a battery, and classic controls that include a D-pad, an A and B button, and Start Select, all on a device that's about 2 inches high. Obviously, that makes it a little challenging to play, which is part of the thrill. Pocket Sprite is compatible with emulators from Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Sega Game Gear, and Sega Master System, so you can even play your favorite oldies on it. The creator of Pocket Sprite, Jeroen Domberg, hopes that people will also build plenty of their own indie games on the platform, and create a little mini market. It's definitely a better waste of time than a fidget spinner. Number 6. A drone that can fit on the tip of your finger. How small can we make flying machines? This is another area we see a lot of competition, including some infamous failures. But no one has gone quite as small as Aerex, with the Aeris quadcopter. This little fully functional drone can rest easily on your finger, but still works. In fact, its recharging base is actually in the middle of the gamer-friendly control you use to move it around via a 2.4 GHz connection. Charging takes around 15 minutes and gives you around 5 minutes of flight time, enough to fool around a bit. Fortunately, thanks to 6-axis stabilization, your short flight is likely to be smooth. There are also some fun LED lights for Firefly-like night flights, although outdoor use isn't exactly recommended. Number 5. The smallest radios that will ever exist. How small do you think the tiniest functioning radio is? Remember, we've seen computers the size of a grain of salt and drones that can balance on the tip of your finger. The smallest radio goes way beyond that. Thanks to work from a team of scientists at Berkeley, the tiniest fully functional radio is only the size of a single carbon nanotube. How does that work? Well, the nanotube is positioned between two ultra-small electrodes that together can act as receiver, tuner, amplifier, and everything else that a radio needs. The flexible electric nature of the carbon nanotube allows it to switch between all of these roles as needed. The microscopic version can even tune into a radio signal and play it through an external speaker. This radio has been around for more than a decade now, Even tinier versions now exist using the same principles in things like pink diamonds, albeit in a more limited form. These small radios have various medical applications, but much of their potential is still unused. Number 4. The world's tiniest violin is actually invisible. Thanks to the wonders of science, playing the world's tiniest violin is no longer just a sarcastic turn of phrase, but actually possible. Thanks to a little something called Project Soli. Project Soli was a Google endeavor focused on creating a computer chip that used radar to detect movements. Project Soli had a number of experimental uses, including the ability to turn very small movements into sound, and you can see where this is going. The folks over at Design.io took Soli and used it to create a small sensor block about the size of a sticky notepad. It detects itty-bitty movements with your fingers, such as rubbing your thumb and finger together in the sad violin motion. This will translate to real violin noises, which means that the world's tiniest violin is in fact invisible, and that you've actually been playing it all along, although it might take some practice to get good at it. Number 3. The smallest mobile phone ever produced. Why would you want to make a smartphone that's so small you can barely use it? According to the creators, it was merely the challenge of seeing if they could do it. The mobile phone is called the Zenko Tiny T1, and it's about the size of that game system we looked at earlier. The perfect size for a key fob, and just big enough to read the screen and type on the tiny keypad. It works too, mostly. It can hold 300 phone numbers and 50 text messages, and comes with a nano SIM that you can program for any available network. The phone is, of course, 2G, but it doesn't exactly need a lot of data for simple calls and texts. The battery lasts for about 180 minutes of talk time, which is quite impressive for a phone of this size. While the whole thing is primarily an engineering experiment, the Kickstarter offers a few ideas about what you could do with a phone like this. For example, you could give one to your young kids who aren't quite ready for a real smartphone but still need a way to call if necessary. Just make sure that they keep it charged. Number 2. The tiniest satellite is the creation of a brilliant teen. Look how tiny that satellite is. You could lose it in a backpack. But it's a very real satellite developed by 18-year-old Rifat Sharouk and his science team. India has even launched the satellite via a NASA rocket, where the cute little cube spent around 125 minutes in space before detaching as planned and falling into the ocean. All the equipment on board the satellite was designed to pick up basic readings, which it appeared to do successfully. The circuit boards were protected by a 3D printed carbon fiber polymer, and inner tech included a nano Geiger counter to measure radiation in space. So what were you doing when you were 18? Number 1. The smallest sensor in the world never needs a battery. Thank Fujitsu for this super small sensor, only around 82 millimeters long and 24 millimeters wide. The company calls it the smallest sensor device in the world, which is a bit of a stretch, but it certainly seems to be the smallest independent sensor anyone has manufactured. It uses wireless transmission technology to sense things like temperature and humidity, then send the data onto larger devices for collection. Most impressive of all, this little guy doesn't need a battery and never runs out of power when properly positioned. That's because it runs on solar power, and a basic solar cell is enough to keep the sensor running indefinitely. Combine this with the ability to transfer information as far as 7 kilometers via a wireless signal, and you can see why the device might be a big deal. One of the most promising applications is in environmental science and project maintenance, where dozens of these sensors can be spread out across a wide area where electricity and even people struggle to reach. Then they can collect valuable monitoring data for years. So while creating machines with nanoparticles is excellent and impressive, it's also good to remember that this particular niche of the technology world has existed for a long time. And building small versions of fighter planes or automobiles was, in its way, just as impressive. Well, that's all from this video. Which one of these tech gadgets did you like the most? Tell us your ideas in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe to Tech Rumor for more thought-provoking tech videos.